Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, folks. My name is Riley Bell, and I'll be providing you with your weather forecast for Monday and Tuesday. Looks like we have a big weather system that'll be swinging through with both severe weather and winter weather, but first, let's lead off with our Storm Prediction Center outlooks. Our Day 2 outlook highlights a slight risk in the yellow here as seen through parts of southeastern Texas, southern and central Louisiana, southern Mississippi, southwestern and southern Alabama, and the western Florida panhandle, as well as a marginal risk that extends through much of eastern Texas, northern Louisiana, extreme southern Arkansas, central Mississippi, central Alabama, and even clipping Georgia and a little bit more of that Florida panhandle. Moving into Day 3, Tuesday, we have a slight risk that'll be encompassing, again, eastern parts of the Day 2 outlook area, but also more of central and eastern Florida, a lot of southern Georgia, into the Carolina coast areas with a marginal risk covering the remainder of Florida, as well as a little bit more of Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. Now let's take a deeper dive into what this system may bring to you. Looking at the 500 millibar heights and winds, we have a large system off the west coast that'll be swinging through the southwestern and southern U.S., through the deep south, and even over into the southern mid-Atlantic coast by Tuesday. Because we have a fairly volatile environment near and around the Gulf Coast as well as the southern Atlantic coast, especially as this system moves through, you can see those dew points starting to reach north, reach inland a little bit through Texas, and later translating further east through Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, and even the Carolinas, maybe a tiny bit getting into the Virginia coast. Along with that moisture, we're going to have some pretty strong low and upper level winds. Here we're looking at the 850 millibar height winds, in which we have a very large area of these strong southerly winds ripping across the southern plains. And soon enough, that will begin to translate east with the event as we progress throughout Monday into overnight and through Tuesday as we're approaching the mid-Atlantic coast. With these winds and with that moisture, we can see quite a lot of severe weather across the deep south. Starting in Texas and over through Louisiana and southern Mississippi to Mobile and the Tallahassee area, we could see anything from damaging winds, maybe some large hail, possibly some tornadoes, a couple of which could be strong, as the SPC was even mentioning. And pushing off into the mid-Atlantic coast the next day, Tuesday, we could see another chance for those strong winds, maybe isolated large hail, and even a few strong tornadoes, as the Storm Prediction Center also mentioned for this day. Although I think the main risks for it will be along the Gulf Coast here, and then the coast of the Carolinas, and maybe a tiny bit of Georgia, as well as a little bit further inland, maybe towards Raleigh. Taking a closer look here at our mixed layer CAPE values, we can see a fairly decently sized area of those upper values, nearing 1,500 to even 2,000 joules of CAPE as we're crossing through the Texas coast and even over towards Louisiana. That energy persists overnight over into Mississippi, Alabama, and the Florida panhandle. As we're coming into Tuesday, and with that energy continuing to track along the coast and even more building in the Atlantic coast, this could fuel several thunderstorms, especially a couple of supercells that could come up off of the water and even come inland. Whereas over here in the Carolinas, we could even see some storms just forming out in front of the cold front, out in front of the main line of storms. Those will be your main tornado producers, although the line can definitely produce some of its own, as well as a bunch of damaging wind associated with that line and some isolated hail with those cells out in front. Looking at recent HRRR runs, we can see roughly what we can expect from this system. Going through Texas, we can see that line of cells that are developing back here, as well as some that may fire out in that warm sector as depicted earlier in the video. And even some out over here in Louisiana coming off of the Gulf of Mexico inland through the coast and drifting further north as that cold front continues to shift east throughout the night. These little cells out in front would be your main tornado threat as well as your hail threat. and the wind threat would be mostly along this line of cells here that will end up tracking across the area. Now we'll take a look at the NAM 3-kilometer model, which shows that same line of thunderstorms persisting throughout the night, moving off to the east, with occasionally, again, some of those thunderstorms out in front of that line. Similar to Monday, these out in front will be the ones that pose the main threat for tornadoes and hail. Meanwhile, this will likely be packing a punch in terms of damaging wind gusts and even isolated spin-ups given the environment. As we're pushing through Tuesday morning and towards the afternoon, we may see some more cells firing out in front, either in Florida or up through Georgia, South Carolina, and especially coastal South Carolina and into central and eastern North Carolina as that line continues to push off to the east and as that warm sector strengthens. Now, what else can we expect from this system as it pushes across most of the U.S.? Well, along those southern coastal states and even the mid-Atlantic, we can expect a good amount of flooding all through here, through parts of Florida, and even through the mid-Atlantic, as well as, well, you probably noticed a lot of snowfall through much of the Central Plains, the Midwest, up into the Ohio Valley even, on the far back side of this system, and up into Canada, as that snow continues to push off to the northeast following or ahead of the low pressure. Here's a quick look at your rain totals with this system as it begins to push across the southern states, looking in a lot of central Texas and even up into Oklahoma, as well as up into much of the plains. You can see isolated amounts upwards of an inch even, especially in Texas, where you can see an inch and a half pushing off through Louisiana and Arkansas. You can see upwards of 2 to 3 inches in some areas, and even going further through the deep south, we're looking at widespread areas of much higher rainfall, even approaching 4 to 5 inches in some areas, and especially as we continue to push off towards that mid-Atlantic coast along the backside of this system, you can see a lot of rain persisting throughout your Tuesday. Among other factors, snow is not out of the question. For a lot of the plains, you can see that snow building in the central plains and in the northern plains, sometimes even getting close to 5 to 8 inches and even upwards of a foot as north as South Dakota and Minnesota, and then that will end up pushing off through much of the Midwest, Iowa, Wisconsin, and even up through Michigan and parts of the northern Ohio Valley, with fairly widespread values of 3 to 5 inches expected. Another area to watch, which you all have been getting snow already, the Northeast continues to gain some snowfall from the previous system that's been pushing through, and you may actually get a little bit more from the system that's about to come through again if you live in Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and up into New York and Vermont. That area could definitely see a few more inches stacked on top of what you previously had, but it should not be as much of an impact as you may see if you live in the upper Midwest or the northern plains, even the northern Ohio Valley. Now I'll go ahead and wrap this video up, but first, I'll give a bit more of a proper presentation for who I am and how you can expect to see me on this channel. Again, my name is Riley Bell, and I've been working with Nate in the background for a while, and I've been chasing for him to, well, close to a year now, and I'm very thankful to have received this position with his channel where I can produce content and engage with you all. Along with YouTube, I am a meteorology major at the University of Oklahoma, and I just finished my first semester, and I'm very excited to see how much I'm able to learn and translate to you all over my time here. Now let's get back to a proper outro. Thank you all for watching. Hopefully this video was produced fairly well considering it is my first ever real YouTube video, and I'm on a time crunch to get to Dallas tonight. Remember to check the Storm Prediction Center or your preferred news outlet for further weather updates, as well as this channel for a stream or two in the upcoming days. Also remember to heed any watches and warnings that are issued for your area, and have a safety plan in place for if you were to be under a severe thunderstorm warning or a tornado warning. If you like this video, please drop a like down below and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It greatly helps us reach a wider audience and inform people of what is to come. Thank you all, and I'll see you tomorrow.